A lot of people struggle with letting go of past experiences, which is totally normal because experiences have lasting impacts on us. They impact and shape up our mind, our body, our sense of self, our identity, things like this. So, of course, whenever something in our life that has been with us for a while has to go, this actually begins to disrupt our system. So, a lot of people struggle with this, which is, like I said, totally normal. In this video, I want to give you a good explanation as to why these things from the past leave lasting impacts on you and how to really let them go. So what do you really do in relation to your current struggles? So let's just jump right into this, starting with the why. Past experiences leave lasting imprints on the body and the mind. The body and the mind are one, no division between them. And of course, whenever we have something that was continuously in our life, like a person or let's say even like a job, an environment, we start to get pretty attached to it. Our sense of self begins to form around it. And within our sense of self includes thoughts, beliefs, narratives, emotions, subtle sensations, all these kinds of like subjective qualities that really make up the feeling of our sense of self, like who we really perceive ourselves to be. And then when things begin to shake up, they leave, it starts to, of course, shift our sense of who we actually are in the world. It begins to shift our sense of myself in relation to in relation to the rest of this existence. So when you have a relationship, for example, and you identify yourself as a boyfriend or a girlfriend, you do exactly what I just said. You identify yourself as a boyfriend or a girlfriend. When that thing collapses, that part of your identity now has to go away. It starts to die. When you are a, let's say, engineer, and then you get laid off your job or for some reason you have to let go of it, of course, that part of your identity now has to die. All the routines, all the habitual behaviors related to that are programmed into your body and mind, the thoughts, the beliefs, the narratives, the emotions, all this stuff that's really deeply programmed into you through repetition, all has to start to die out now. And this is quite painful depending on the thing that you're letting go of. It can be really, really hard. There can be a lot of emotions just tied up in the experience that you don't really want to feel. You want to just grab on and cling on more, but that's just not really working out. Life is kind of pulling you away. So past experiences leave lasting imprints on the body and mind. Moving on, we implicitly memorize and hold on to the energy, patterns, and emotions of those past experiences. They get stored in the body. Like I said, your actual sense of self begins to organize around all of these experiences. And then when they start to shift, your sense of ego begins to also shift. And we like to really think of ourselves as like a rigid, kind of like static, unchanging being, but it's just not really true. We're very fluid, constantly changing, and dynamic. Reality itself is constantly changing, fluid, and dynamic. Everything is always in a complete state of flux, vibrating, shifting, changing, etc. And you are exactly like that as well. So when things have to, be let go of course, that's going to shake up the very structures and foundations of who you really take yourself to be, which can lead to a lot of kind of turmoil, sadness, stress, fear, etc. Especially if it's a relationship. That's a big one because it begins to interfere with your attachment system, at least the current state of your attachment system. So moving on. When these things go, these aspects of ourselves die off. Like I said, this can be quite uncomfortable, but here's really how to actually navigate it. The first part is just awareness and acknowledgement. Let's talk about awareness briefly. I talk about this a lot in my videos. We have this kind of illusion that we're really aware of our experience as human beings. And the truth is that most of the time we're actually just running on autopilot. We're lost in thought, we're lost in emotional reactions, we're lost in past wounds, etc. We're lost in just subconscious phenomena that is actually controlling us rather than really being conscious and grounded in the experience, bringing awareness into the body, learning to inhabit the body. bringing awareness to sensation in the direct experience. We're just kind of lost in thoughts, on autopilot essentially, lost in thoughts, kind of looping. So we're not really aware of our experience in a very deep way. We're only aware of it in a very sort of shallow way, and it's very mechanical and robotic, really. So you want to, of course, just acknowledge what's happened, right? Recognize and accept past experiences as essentially a part of your journey. And you want to start becoming aware of the emotions that are tied to these experiences and really begin to observe them without judgment. Because a lot of these actual emotions is where a lot of that stuff is stored. It's not just like the thoughts, really. A lot of the core of why you can't let go is just because of these stuck emotions in the body that literally, they get stuck in the body. So by just beginning to acknowledge them and cultivate some awareness around them, it's kind of like your body can naturally start to kind of flush them out. They're kind of waiting there and they're just stuck there. And until you start to actually shine the light of your consciousness on them, they're just going to remain stuck there in a sort of holding pattern. So the second you start to bring awareness to them, that holding pattern begins to become a bit more fluid until it's able to kind of break and then flow and then kind of just dismantle. So again, I'll repeat that point of just acknowledging the emotions tied to these experiences without judgment. A core part of that is without judgment. We like to judge ourselves a lot, judge how we feel, judge our emotions. We have a lot of beliefs about how we should feel and how we shouldn't feel and all sorts of stuff like this. Just let go of all your preconceived notions about what you should feel and what you shouldn't feel, and just allow yourself to feel regardless of what it is. Allow yourself to just start embracing the full spectrum of your own human emotion. Whether it's grief, sadness, shame, guilt, embarrassment, to bliss, excitement, joy, feeling ecstatic, feeling a sense of awe and curiosity. You want to learn to just stop numbing yourself to the emotional spectrum and learn to ride the waves of it. Learn to ride the chaotic, ever-changing nature of it rather than being afraid of these aspects of yourself and then needing to repress them because secretly you're actually just afraid of your own internal world. Moving on is mindful release. So observing feelings related to the past without clinging to them is essential because typically we'll want to actually cling to those feelings, right? Cling to just the state. And this, of course, begins to hold on to what is happening in a way that causes a lot of suffering, a lot of unnecessary suffering, meaning it's not really needed. It's something that we're creating on a moment-to-moment basis. So just observing feelings related to the past without clinging to them. And a core part of this is just moving into the actual sensations in the body, the pure senses, like the actual flowing sensations in the body. When you direct your attention to it, you can just feel this sort of ever-changing complex array of sensation. You just focus on that. To make it even simpler, the physical sensations in your body, just give your attention to that and feel them. Connect with exactly that. So use techniques like deep breathing, for example, to facilitate emotional release. And you're also going to want to start practicing some mindfulness meditation, some way to just get out of your thoughts, really, right? This doesn't mean you stop thoughts, but this more so means just not being so lost in them, learning to just connect to the sensations going on in the present experience and just not always being so disconnected from what's going on right now. And when you start to actually practice meditation, one thing that you really can't help but notice is how disconnected you actually are from the present experience, how unmindful you really are of it, how lost in thoughts you really are, how disconnected from your body and sensations and your own presence you really are. So moving on is emotional acceptance. You just allow yourself to feel emotions associated with the past without resistance. Instead of trying to play like tug of war, pushing on them, pulling on them, grasping onto the pleasurable ones, pushing away the painful ones, regardless of what arises, you just learn to meet it with acceptance. Regardless of what arises, you just choose to learn to just respect that part of yourself. Learn to actually hold that aspect of yourself with care and love and, of course, acceptance, right? And it's hard at first because when emotions are very difficult, we don't want to love them. We hate those emotions. We hate feeling embarrassment and the shame and the grief and all this stuff. We hate it. But as you learn to just connect to them over and over and over again, you cultivate a healthier relationship to yourself, you'll actually begin to love the full spectrum of who you are, really, rather than just always avoiding it or things like this, pushing them away, repressing them. So just allowing yourself to feel emotions associated with the past without resistance. Let go of your control of them. Let go of the need to control the flow of sensation in your body, just allowing it to kind of come out naturally in a sort of rhythm. There's a flow to the sensations. Have you noticed that? Just giving them your attention, you can feel that they're moving, they're flowing. And certain parts of your body, they can probably flow better than others. Some areas you probably hold a lot of tension in, and you're essentially just doing that in order to restrict the flow of sensation. Even being lost in thought, when you're always lost in thought, there's actually a disconnect from sensations in the head. So in a lot of ways, the habitual thinking is actually a sort of survival mechanism, but we won't really get into that here. So understand that discomfort can be processed and released. And you want to be doing this in a way so that you're not like just trying to process and release it so I can go away, get it away as fast as possible. It's just more so meeting yourself where you're actually at in this experience. It's just, where am I truly at here? What do I have to see within myself? What do I have to process within myself? And just really starting with that, so that you have to be very honest with yourself as well. Right? You're digging into your own internal world, and there's no one to tell you what's going on in there except for you, really. Right? If you're doing this kind of work, you have to learn how to be honest about your own internal world, because there's no one there to hold your hand for you. It's only up to you to truly investigate and to be very honest about. Moving on is reframing and letting go of narratives. So I talked quite a lot about the emotional component, but you probably have a lot of stories in relation to your past about how maybe great it was or how bad it was. And just notice the stories that you have associated with your particular events. And for a lot of these, they're going to be tied in with emotions as well that are in the body. So again, notice the emotions related to these stories, but I want to talk about the stories specifically. A lot of these stories you'll most likely have to challenge and reframe and just let go of, which is the exact thing that you don't really want to do, because when your mind is kind of bringing up these stories, it can assert them as like, this is what was true and real and actual, or like, it'll never be that good again, right? Just notice that there's like a certain conviction that you have in relation to these stories, and there's a certain attitude that you have in relation to them as well. There's a certain like, I'll just leave it at that. There's a certain attitude that you have in relation to them as well. And just by becoming aware, feeling into this stuff, it naturally starts to dismantle. Just by being aware of the stories rather than so identified with them, they naturally start to dismantle. And when I say not being identified with them, I don't mean disassociating from them. I mean just watching them and really connecting to them and just recognizing that it's just something that's arising and passing in the moment. These are stories, thoughts in the mind that just arise and pass, and you just want them to arise and pass freely. So again, you can even just challenge and reframe a lot of, especially the negative stories about your past, kind of just reframing them as lessons for growth, lessons for development, things like this, learning, just stuff like that. So just observe them and let them go, arise and pass. And again, you're really just kind of focusing on the actual lessons and the things that you've picked up from the past experiences, and then just dropping the things that don't really serve you here. And then, of course, you can even just set intentions for the future, things like where you want, what directions you kind of want to move in. A core part of this is also just having guiding principles for your future. Don't make them like rigid or dogmatic, right? Not like some sort of like 10 Commandments style thing, but just having some core principles like, okay, there was this experience that happened in my past, and it happened due to X, Y, and Z, and I need to have some kind of principles so that like I don't repeat these past mistakes. Maybe I have to be more honest in my relationship to others. Maybe I have to be more self-aware. Maybe I have to be more available emotionally, right? It's just decipher it for yourself. But essentially, you're just noticing what principles will actually help you to move forward, and then just really testing those principles until you find a lot of core principles that really help you to kind of just move forward in your life. And of course, another core point is just learning how to be present once again, which you do through mindfulness meditation and just continuously practicing that. just learning how to get to the point where you feel so great in the present that you don't even really want to think about it anymore. It just becomes like a lot of unnecessary energy to always be thinking about it. And naturally, our body's just this sort of ever-changing, like literally sensational experience. But we're so disconnected and tense and lost in thought that we don't really experience the body to be that way. We experience it to be tense, numb, dull, etc. And just learning to really begin to get into your body allows the energy in it to just flow and move, and the sensations to become very just ecstatic. Learning to not always have to control everything that you're feeling in your body allows it to flow much smoother. For bonus clarity, what I mean here by not controlling it is just letting go of your interference with it. It doesn't mean that if you feel angry, you attack someone. It's really not like that at all. It's more so just the feeling in your body, let go of controlling it. Let go of needing to interfere with it, let go of needing to change it. Just accepting what's happening in the moment, allowing it to arise fully, allowing it to move naturally as it wants to. And that's it. So that's it for this video. If you're interested in working one-to-one with me, you can apply to do so. Link is in the pinned comment. Take it easy.